Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, our play-by-email game against XTRG. In the last couple of episodes, the Japanese have stepped up their aggression in the South Pacific. They have also begun to drive into the Dutch East Indies, and while doing that, they have also launched a mini carrier raid off the northwestern coast of Australia, and that's where we're rejoining things today to see how things shape up. Now, I have been away for a few days. I was traveling. I went to the battlefield at Antietam and Gettysburg as well, and spent about 4 days out east on the U.S. East Coast visiting these battlefields. And it was a great time, but it also meant that I was away from streaming. I was away from the gaming world because I didn't have a computer. So it was a nice little disconnect, but I am back now and plan to stream quite a bit over the next couple of days. I'm streaming War in the Pacific tonight, but then I'm also going to be streaming some Radio Commander probably tomorrow around 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. Maybe I've kind of, after walking the field at Antietam and Gettysburg, I'm in a little bit of the mood to return maybe to Scourge of War and do some Scourge of War Gettysburg or Antietam. I know those are a little bit older games, but, what temporary flotation repairs failing on the Prince of Wales. What? And some Japanese cruisers here bombarding off the coast of Sing Kawang. Wait, I need to sing? But off here on the northwest coast of the island of Borneo. So that obviously is going to even further complicate matters in the Dutch East Indies if he's going to be making a move here. Swingakang, for those of you who don't remember, has a level 3 airfield, so this is a very good base for him to take. It does have some larger coastal defense guns. We've got some 180mm coastal defense guns, but apparently they can't hit the broadside of a light cruiser or cargo ships or anything like that. We did lose 11 casualties. He lost 6. Not a good start. I think we got like a battalion ashore there, so we'll end up seeing how that all works out. Second landing turn there, he loses 43 casualties with 5 squads destroyed. I'm guessing he probably hasn't properly prepared for the amphibious assault. Okay. Who are the powers that be, J Street? No one's gonna sack me. I'll sack you. Alright, more landings at Swingakang. And come on, turn, let's go. We got some subs, we got some depth charges. We're moving into the air operations phase. We'll see what the carriers do off the coast of Australia. Hey, Charcoal. Hype, hype, hype. Hell yeah. What the hell is that emoji? I can't even make it out. Is it like a little kid with like cat ears or something? All right, so lots of recon over our shipping here near Australia. I kind of suspect that the Japanese might be out of torpedoes. They didn't use any last turn. At least I don't think they did. Meanwhile, we've got some GM3 Nells. Oh, no! No! Our tanker's at Oosthaven! Oh, shit. All right, well, Japanese torpedoes certainly on board the Nells here over Oosthaven. The tanker Pan Europa and another tanker it looks like XTRG kind of realized that, hey, wait a minute, he's pulling a lot of fuel out of the southern tip of Sumatra, and after like 2 months of that, he kind of wised up and launched torpedo attacks against the Herborg tanker and then the Pan Europa tanker. These are both decent-sized tankers. Those will probably be some pretty big victory point losses. I'm guessing we'll lose both of them. Only one torpedo on the Pan Europa, but again, these are tankers that are mostly full of fuel, and yeah, we'll probably lose both of them. Meanwhile, also a GM4 Betty raid here over Palembang. A lone 0 for escort. 9 Bettys coming in here against some tiny-ass ships. We don't do anything. They don't do anything. Hey Fletch, thanks for joining the Twitch channel. Yeah, I do stream at ungodly hours. Just fair warning there. That makes it hard to build too large of a following on Twitch, but we've been making some progress here. The last stream, which admittedly was not starting at midnight Central Standard Time, it was closer to around 10 o'clock Central. I think we had like 41, 42 people, what we peaked out at, and that was the highest that we've done on War in the Pacific anyway. So we've been growing the base pretty steadily, but we're also streaming again at hours that are probably difficult for a lot of Americans to view in. All right, so we've got some level bombing here over Rangoon. We didn't have any of our fighters intercept. Probably a good decision. He had 20 Oscars escorting there. Meanwhile, some more bombing raids here over Wencao. Quite a few bombing raids over Wencao here, mostly dive bombers, lighter bombers. I think we saw some stuff, some stuff over Changsha here, some Sally bombers as well. Doing some damage to our troops, nothing crazy or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if his losses in the Singapore campaign had an impact in his overall ability to shut the Dutch East Indies down. You can see here the carriers are going against our cruiser task force. Looks like our cruiser task force failed to intercept his carriers. We did take one bomb hit on the Cape Town, and one on the Colombo. Again, no torpedoes, no sign of any torpedoes, and these are Kate torpedo planes that he's using bombs against. So I'm guessing he burned through all his torpedoes. That would be the only logical explanation why he's using just bombs on his attacks there. Fortunately, that wasn't too bad of a turn. You know, a single 250 kilogram bomb, that's like a 500-pound bomb, I think, roughly. A single bomb into a light cruiser is not going to send it to the bottom. He did just put a bomb into a destroyer. That'll do a little bit more damage, but I doubt it actually sinks it. I think that was a destroyer operating on its own. A third air raid coming out of these carriers, so these guys are busy here, flying quite a few sorties. They're coming up against the AVP Pollux. Remember, this was our bomb magnet. This was our decoy here, and you can see they put one into the Pollux as well. Again, still no sign of torpedoes, so that indicates to me that he probably has none. I wonder how many sorties he has left on his carrier group. I don't think the light carriers are designed to have tons and tons of operations off of them. And he's been pretty active. All right, the Harburg sinks, the Pollux sinks, and some more recon occurring. Yeah, Charcoal, he's been pretty conservative with his land-based airstrikes, and I think that's probably because he lost over 100 bombers over Singapore, and he lost over 50 bombers over the Philippines in the first couple of weeks of the war. And I wonder if that made him a little bit more cautious to our benefit than otherwise was the case. More Nels coming into Palembang here. So he's definitely being a little bit more active with his naval bombers here. No hits, though. Okay. Let's get down to business and defeat the Huns. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Alright, so a lot of recon. This is a relatively quiet turn. There was the development of the tankers being attacked at Oosthaven, which kind of sucks, but was to be expected sooner or later. Another bomb hit this one into a mine layer here south of the carriers. I didn't hear it go down. Or a minesweeper, sorry. So another air raid, another bomb hit. Another air raid here to the east, and this is coming against these local minesweepers that we had been trying to evacuate out of Surabaya. These guys basically blow up in a single hit. A direct hit. It sinks. Yeah, okay, so we lost 3 of these AMCs. These are all only worth 1 victory point. Honestly, if a single one of his planes crashes on landing because it's just operationally, you know, dead, then that's fine for me. But 5 more sorties. He's using up his ability to launch large air raids in the event that we continue to try and pursue him with our cruisers. And so in that sense, I think it's a positive. By the way, guys, can you hear me over the audio okay? Okay. So our tanker, our submarine Tambor fires torpedoes, and what a shocker, it doesn't do anything. Surface combat, there's nothing. The Pan Europa did sink eventually, so we did lose that second tanker here. Light cruisers continuing to bombard here at Swingakang. We actually get a single shell hit on a cargo ship, the Nippo Maru, 180 millimeter artillery shell. How large? What's 180 millimeters again? He's landing on the eastern tip of whatever that island is where Ambion is, Seram. He's also landing on the Dutch New Guinea coast, all over the Dutch New Guinea coast. He's really gone all out in the last couple of weeks there. It's a 6 or 7 inch shell based on what you're both saying here. All right. I mean, that's a decent sized shell. All right, Japanese deliberate attack at Nanning. We have reserves on the way there. We're trying to race 3 Chinese corps here to save the day. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to hold on much longer at Nanning. You can see here the Japanese did manage to reduce the fortifications down to 0. They're attacking with 7,700 men, 72 guns, 11 assault vehicles, 247 assault value. We're defending with 2,600 men, 12 guns, basically a base force. The fortification was reduced to 0. I think we've got like 700 assault value on the way. If we can get there before the Japanese take the base, I don't think there's any way they take it. I'm not sure if we have enough force, however, to retake the base in the event that it falls to the Japanese, because, well, their Chinese forces aren't great on the attack. So we'll see if they arrive in time. My gut tells me they probably won't march 32 miles in a day, so we probably will lose the base before they arrive, but we'll try and retake it. Meanwhile, he landed a full infantry regiment here at Swingakang, so he didn't go soft in terms of the forces. He also landed 3 immediately with those forces. He landed 3 Japanese Navy Air Force companies. These are units that basically just have assault or aviation support, so they're not combat forces, and then he landed a portion of an SLNF force. So what this is telling us is a small Marine force and then a large Army force with 3 aviation support units. That's basically telling us he's going to turn this into a bastion of air support almost immediately. He wouldn't have landed those 3 units alongside the infantry regiment if he didn't basically immediately plan on turning it into a air fortress. He's probably going to relocate a lot of his Southeast Asia Air Force into Swingakang as soon as he can. At the southern tip of Singapore, that basically will close the entire Dutch East Indies within a matter of days. Okay. So the Japanese take the northeast tip of Mindanao. Pago expands a port to level 3. That should be helpful. Christmas Island and Tricomali expand their fortifications to 2. Yeah, Charcoal, I don't know how organized any of this feels. Feels like he's just opportunistically jumping around from base to base, although there seems to be a little bit more structure as of late with his landings on the New Guinea coast. All right. So the battleship Revenge arrives at Cape Town. We'll jump back in. All right, guys, honestly, this is going to be a bit of a shorter turn. I don't have a lot going on here. I did do a couple of things here this turn. First off, this was based off a suggestion that one of you had, was that saying like, hey, if your subs are so crappy with their torpedoes that they can't hit anything, maybe you should try laying a minefield where his cargo ships are. So we're actually loading up, and this is probably highly inefficient, because if you think about it, we're going to sail subs halfway across the Pacific. It'll probably take the better part of 2 weeks to get them there. They're going to drop mines that may sink 1 ship, and then they're going to have to go all the way back. It's going to be like a 3 to 4 week turnaround just to get a few mines and maybe get a lucky hit. The mines aren't going to have any kind of like minesweeper support, so they're going to rapidly decay. But the hope is that maybe we can launch sort of an offensive minefield here and do some sort of damage to something. Because why the hell not? It doesn't seem like any other use of our subs is very efficient. If we had a forward base, it might be more efficient. But in any event, we're going to be sending these 6 submarines here. They've got about 90 total mines. I don't know exactly where I'm going to place the mines quite yet, but we're going to send them toward Japan. We did identify at least one hex that we know he's sailing over, and it's a coastal hex, so the mines last a little bit longer. It's right here. We can see this is a heavy force of cruiser mine layers, destroyers, and cargo ships just off the west coast of Mopo, and it might not be a disastrous place to put a minefield. We can see what happens here, but, you know, who knows? 2 weeks, isn't that 5 months from now? 2 weeks has not taken us 5 months in gameplay terms. Not lately, anyway. So anyway, that's kind of one of the things we're doing with our submarines. Another thing that we're doing this turn is we are loading up the Canadians. So hide your ears, Newhauser, but the 13th Canadian Infantry Brigade is on its way forward. It has arrived in San Diego. It has been formed up of the various Canadian infantry battalions, and it is going to go to Christmas Island, I think. Either that or somewhere else. But so my thought process is we just landed a combat infantry regiment here in New Zealand. Between the New Zealand forces and the lone American force that just landed there, we now have almost 300 assault value on the northern coast of New Zealand. He probably wouldn't land in Auckland itself. He might land somewhere else. But in any event, that's a lot of engineers. That's a lot of support to try and start building up fortifications. We've already got reasonably good fortifications in New Zealand. I'm not too worried that he's going to, surprise us and land in New Zealand. But in the event that he does, I mean, all these forts are already being built up, and we get some reinforcements if he lands there. The islands of Norfolk is more likely, but the problem is there's no port here, so I can't actually effectively do much with this island. The island of Lord Howe is a little bit better of an option, but I'm not quite sure. So I could send the Canadian Brigade here, which would get us to almost 400 assault value, which would probably require him to land a full division to take the base. And, he certainly could do that. But even if he lands a division, it's not a sure thing, especially at the end of his logistical chain. The other option is sending him to Lord Howe Island to kind of secure that link between New Caledonia and Australia. We might end up doing that. Fiji is probably as reinforced as we need to make it at this time. Almost 300 assault value with a couple of good American and New Zealand regiments in place. Nadi is slightly less well fortified, but again, because it's on the same island as Suva, which is on Fiji, these forces are actually, it's better. I didn't realize that. Okay. So it actually has almost 350 assault value. So between the two, the island of Fiji has over 600 assault value on it. That would require considerable Japanese investment. Meanwhile, Pago is not quite as well reinforced. It's 343, but they're very high-quality units, U.S. Marines, U.S. Infantry. It's got some coastal defense forces here. It's got well-built-up entrenchments. It's level 3 forts working on level 4, just built up level 3 ports, working on level 4 airfields. Pago's a good bastion to kind of build up. So at that point, the question becomes, where do we want to send a Canadian infantry brigade? Well, we could send it to the strong bases we already have. We could send it to Pago. We could send it to Fiji. We could send it to New Zealand. But given XTRG's history of avoiding the strong points and going for the weak points, I kind of asked myself, all right, of these bases that are relatively weak, what don't we want him to go for? Johnston Island is an atoll, and so it has a stacking limit of 6,000. It already has over 5,000 soldiers there. It has almost 100 assault value here, a lot of coastal defense marine units. These are very high-quality marine coastal defense units. They're basically 3 of the units that gave the Japanese hell on Wake Island, with some coastal guns as well. So there's a 150 millimeter gun on that one. This guy has 75 millimeter flat guns, 6, 5, and 3-inch coastal guns. And then this other one has a 5-inch coastal gun a 3-inch coastal gun, multiples. So this would be a little bit of a pain, I think, for him to take. He'd really have to dispatch a strong force to take Johnston Island from a naval bombardment perspective. Otherwise, he'd lose a lot of landing forces. And the atoll makes it kind of more challenging. Plus, it's within supporting distance of Pearl Harbor. So I think Johnston Island is fortified enough. Palmyra is another option for him to go for. It has a level 2 airfield, level 1 port, could be up to level 2 ports. It's relatively weakly defended. It has 2 coastal defense units here. Actually, it's got 4 5-inch guns and 4 3-inch guns and another 8 and 4. So actually, it's got 12 3-inch guns and 8 5-inch coastal defense guns. Radar, it's got a couple of light tanks. Not a ton of assault value, but again, it's an atoll, and it's got some high-quality Marines on it. So we could reinforce Palmyra further, but I think a brigade there is probably overkill. I don't think he's going to land a full regiment on Palmyra stuck between Christmas Island and Johnston Island. So then the other question becomes, well, what next? Christmas Island was intended to kind of be a link of ours. It can build up to a level 5 airfield. It's far enough away from Pearl Harbor to not be able to be supported in any meaningful way. It is isolated enough for him to have a reasonable chance of success. He could stage out of Canton Island, which he's already taken, and if he takes Christmas Island, he basically makes our supply situation to New Zealand and Australia a lot more difficult, something he's proven a desire to attack. And so right now I'm tentatively sending the Canadian Brigade to Christmas Island, which is just not very well defended right now. We don't really have any troops here. So the intent would be to garrison them out of Christmas Island in a defensive option. Another alternative I've considered is Penryn Island, which is kind of a similar situation, except that it is also an atoll, so that limits how damaging it would be if he was to take this base, but it would kind of suck. The thing is, it doesn't have any air capacity. It has only 1 level port capacity. It's not as useful of an island for him to try and take, even if strategically it's well placed to set aside our supply line. So for the moment, the Canadians are going to Christmas Island, but in a week or so as they get closer, we could divert them somewhere else. It's really about reinforcing this line between him and us to ensure that we keep New Zealand and we keep Australia as safe as we can at this point. Ooh, that was a mouthful. So that's what we're doing with the Canadian Brigade. That's one of the things we're doing this turn. And then the other thing that we're kind of worrying about or wondering about is his carriers. Now, it looks like he's moving his carriers east, so presumably he may be pulling them out. He hasn't done anything with torpedoes, so we're assuming he's out of that. If we take a look at the cruisers that were hit by bombs, really basically no damage, like less than 10 system damage, no flooding, no fires, less than 3 engine damage on almost everything. Those bombs either didn't actually hit them and that was fog of war, or they did basically no damage. The question is, do we want to race our cruisers forward and try and engage him? I'm intending to, so I've got these set to max, flank speed. We're going to try and race out in front of them. These cruisers have radar, so maybe if we can get engaged in the night, we might be able to do something. This is a pretty strong cruiser force. It's got 2 heavy cruisers, 5 light cruisers, only 1 destroyer, though, for screening. So that might be a little bit risky with Japanese long-lance torpedoes everywhere if the Japanese have a lot of them. But I do think it's worth the risk. So we are going to continue pressing against these Japanese carriers, and we're going to try and sprint out ahead of them and see if we can force an engagement. Maybe at night, maybe during the day, who knows. But I'd prefer to not get bombed. The other thing is if he does race south, we'll be in behind him, and we'll see what happens that. If he does try and chase our cruisers and move further south, we also have these carriers up here, which are trying to link up, but they've got fuel situations that aren't super favorable. The Hermes group is basically out of fuel. This destroyer here, Kortner, is taking a lot of systems damage. Good thing is systems damage is pretty quick to repair. The Hobart as well. When the Indomitable links up with them, they'll be able to help refuel these guys, but they're not going to have a lot of fuel left over themselves to operate. So we'll have to kind of figure out what the right course is, especially now that the Dutch East Indies is closed to us. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with that, but it would also require him hanging his carriers around there for another 2 or 3 days for us to actually do anything. So anyway, we did try and intercept his carriers with our cruisers last turn, Jack, just as an FYI. Our cruisers failed to engage. So just because we're sending them in that direction does not mean in any way that we will actually get a intercept. It's very likely that we won't. But anyway, I don't know if the heavy cruisers were spotted or not. They didn't drop bombs on them, but they do have a 10 out of 10 detection, so presumably he knows that they might be there. I'm not really sure. We know, he obviously knows the task force is there. Meanwhile, we're going to race these tankers here at Carnarvon south toward Perth at full speed, and trying to get them out of Dodge. At least 2 of them anyway. Other tankers are out here at sea. They're doing their thing. I guess these guys can... Whoops. Not what I wanted to do. I guess these guys can probably return to Perth. I'm just assuming if he's moving east, he's not going after Perth. But if he does, it's probably going to be with a focus of going after our cruisers. So for at least for the moment anyway, we'll move these guys back toward Perth. We can always divert them again further away, but I think right now they're relatively safe if they head back into Perth. Again, he doesn't even have torpedoes, so how many more bombs he has left to drop on us seems a fair question. Those tankers going to Cape Town. I don't have any fuel at Cape Town, so I'm not sure what they're going to do there. Those guys are evacuating, and these guys are just kind of still hanging out over here. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take him to convert New Caledonia into something that he can actually do something with. I mean, Nomaya already has level 2 airfield and level 2 port, so it has something. But I guess we'll find out before too long how much more it's going to take. Not a lot of other events. We do have these cores over here that are on the way to Nanning. They're 13 and 14 miles respectively into their march. That means they still have over 30 miles to go. They're probably not going to make it there this turn, which means if he does attack at Nanning again, then it'll fall before our reinforcements get there, which is bad. But the good news is they do have an assault value of over 700, which is good, but I don't really know what to expect here because it seems like the Japanese are going to take this city. We'll have to figure out what to do. Flying Tigers are at Chungking. They're still reforming. We're back up to 20. We're not back. We're up to 22 Flying Tigers out of Chungking. 4 more are still not flyable here at Changheth. And then we also need more reinforcement airframes to get them back up to their strength. The regulation strength would have over 54 aircraft between the 2 squadrons. They're at less than 50% of their strength. Not a lot of other changes here in Chungking or Changsha or anything like that. Still over 4,600 assault value here. Still no crisis supply situation for any of the troops there. Hanging in there. Fortifications are at 4. We're trying to build them back up to 5. We've gotten up to 10%, but we're probably looking at another 2 weeks before we get there, assuming he doesn't attack before then, and we'll see. I mean, there's no real point in flying the Flying Tigers over Nanning because he hasn't really been bombing Nanning. He's been bombing Changsha and he's been bombing Wangchao, but he hasn't really been bombing Nanning. So I'm not going to fly a cap over there just to do it, I guess, is kind of what I mean. Plus, I'd have to transfer the air groups. We don't really have a nearby airfield that's ideal to fly out of. I guess we could have fly out of Quiline. But we don't have enough aviation. Well, we do have enough. We could fly to Quiline, but I don't. It'd be a long cap. We'd probably lose some aircraft to operations losses. It's just not going to make a difference if we do that. Wingchao was bombed again last turn, but again, if he attacks there, it will probably fall. And so I'm hesitant to fly the Flying Tigers in here because there's a good chance if he does attack that this base will fall in the next turn, and if that happens, then we'll lose the entire squadron destroyed. It's just not worth it. Not with the fortifications only at level 1. Meanwhile, nothing really happened over Bataan, I don't think. It has 38,000 supplies left, still hanging in there. Good supply, good entrenchments, good soldiers. In terms of Oosthaven, we're getting the tankers that were in port out We lost the 2 tankers that were loading up fuel. We're not going to wait to load up fuel on these guys. We're going to get them out before he can bomb us again. And we're going to move at full speed to Colombo, just to get out of there, to hopefully get out of there before he attacks again. That's mainly this turn. The one other, though, I guess some of the things we can call out here. Ship sunk last turn was a rough one. Those tankers were pretty valuable. Those are the first valuable tankers we've really lost in this war. We lost the Pan-Europa and the Herberg. Over 51 victory points worth between the 2 ships. Lost a couple of other less valuable ships. In terms of... No, I don't know what is on the Singapore border charcoal. I just know that there's 31 units here. At Johor Bahru, but we don't have a lot of intelligence about what those units are. We have seen some reports of a couple of artillery units. I think there was an armored unit, maybe an infantry regiment or a brigade or something to that effect planning for an attack on Singapore, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're in Johor Bahru. It just means that they're part of his force that is planning to attack Singapore. We can see here the first independent field artillery unit is moving on cargo ships to Kota Bahru, so a little bit further up the peninsula. He's probably going to try and bombard Singapore into nothingness. You can see the 6th Division is planning for an attack on Changsha. No surprise there. The 55th Field Artillery Anti-Aircraft Battalion is located at Changsha as well. So he's got some air defense units with his army there. Not sure if there's anything else. 21st Division is planning for an attack on Singapore. So we know at least that is part of the Singapore planning. A Japanese submarine is moving to 127, 167. Where is that? It's got to be further east. 127 is here. 167... 127. 167? Why is he moving them here? What is down here? Do we have any... All right. Let's go... Let's go sub-hunting, based on our intelligence. 127, 167. I can't, it doesn't, like, tell me actually. Alright, whatever. I'll move them when they get closer over there. Okay, so we'll do that. We're moving a couple of destroyers over here to see if we can intercept whatever that Japanese submarine is over there. Savi might be retaken at some point, not on the priority list right at this moment. One thing we are trying to do is we're trying to build the Admirals Division. So one thing that I did do this turn is the 164th Infantry Regiment is currently attached to the Western Coast Headquarters Unit. It's a restricted headquarter unit. There's 2 other regiments that make up the famous Admirals Infantry Division, which are both already assigned to the Pacific Fleet. They are both at San Diego. The one unit that isn't assigned to the Pacific Fleet is the 164th Infantry Regiment. It is currently at Fort Ord. We are going to move it via rail to San Diego, so about 460 miles. It's going to take a day to pack these guys up. Once we get to 713 political points, we're at 515. So in about 5 days or so, we will transfer this guy to the Pacific Fleet headquarters, which is going to be a huge cost in political points, but we're going to do it. And then we will build the Admirals Division. And that may be our first real ability to launch a counterattack, because it'll be a whole infantry division all ready for an operation somewhere. The other unit that we could build to try and form an infantry division is the 2nd Marine Division, but we still have the 6th Marine Regiment, which is not yet on the map. It won't be on the map for 3 more months, so we can't form the 2nd Marines until the 6th Marines are on the map. And then we're still going to have to do some moving around of troops, because we've got elements of it at Pearl Harbor, elements of it on at Pago Pago. We've got elements of it going where? Where are these guys even going? Task Force 180 or 145 is going where? Oh, yeah, these guys are going to New Zealand. So, I mean, we'll have to link those guys up as well. The Americal will probably be the first combat infantry division that's ready for serious counterattacks. Whether it really makes sense to go after Savi or not, that's not really worth anything from a victory perspective. It might be interesting to try and make a play to retake Midway. Midway is worth a fair amount of points to the Japanese anyway. 27 is basically worth a light cruiser to the Japanese, not a ton to the Allies. Or we could even try and go for Wake if we're just trying to get some practice of an amphibious operation away. Both of those would be relatively low risk. But it may also be needed to repulse a Japanese invasion of Australia or New Zealand or wherever we're at when we do get it formed up. So not making any decisions on that. Still about a week away from actually having that unit in place and ready to start planning for anything in particular. So we've got a little bit of time to think about that. I don't have a ton else going on this turn to really talk about. The one other thing I guess I'm going to do is I am going to spend a few political points. We've had a few ground units destroyed. Some of you have said we should reform some of the units that were destroyed. And I think there's some value in that because the units that were destroyed were actually really cheap to reform. The 4th Australian Brigade, mostly Australian militia, is going to put us back a little bit in terms of political points, which could delay us forming up the American Infantry Division. But when I take a look at that, it's only 5 political points to reform. We get like 40 to 50 of those per day, so it's not even a day setback for that. So we are going to go ahead and we are going to reform the 4th Australian Infantry Brigade. It will take about a month for it to reform, and it will reform in Sydney. So in the event that he does make a play for Australia, these guys will come onto the map, ideally placed to stop that. So we will go ahead and spend those 5 political points on those guys. We're also going to spend 1 political point to reform the 4th Australian Light Anti-Aircraft Unit. It has Bofors anti-aircraft guns, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Same deal there. It only costs 1 political point to do that. The 39th Australian Brigade also, or Battalion, has actually regular infantry units, Australian regular infantry, 36 squads there. Again, only 1 political point to do it, so we are going to do that. And that costs, again, just 1 political point. We're also going to reform the 21st New Zealand Pioneer Company, I think, anyway. It's an engineer unit. You can always use more engineers. It'll reform in Auckland, so that'll help in the event that he decides to go there. Is that all we're going to do? We've got some Abada forces. I don't want to spend 12 political points for the Heron detachment. It's not really worth that much. It's not going to have a ton of units when it rebuilds. The Free French Command, I don't even know where they would actually form. Probably in like Tahiti or something like that. It's 22 political points. It's not really a good unit in the first place. The FMSV Brigade would be interesting to reform. 108 Malayan infantry squads, regular infantry, I believe. But 540 political points. Don't even have that. Even if I did, I'd rather get an American infantry division in the field. And so I think that's the situation there. I think that's... we did have that 12th base force, or 116th, which would be 4 political points to reform, which would be nice, but I mean, it's just we've got plenty of base force units right now, actually. So I think we'll leave that as is. The Middlesex Battalion, Vickers sections... they were killed near Hong Kong. I mean, maybe eventually. Subuk Bay. Where is that? I don't even see them. I can't reform these guys. You cannot recall Subuk Bay. This is a Philippine unit that you can't. Any of these units that are whited out here are units that were destroyed, but you're not allowed to reform. So, can't do that. So anyway, we still have 507 political points. It's probably easier to keep track of what, how many, I guess we'll do the Samoa detachment in Auckland. It's just easier for me to keep track of how many political points I'm getting every turn if there's an even number of them. The Ren detachment, I guess we'll reform them. And then I can just have 505 and know exactly what I get back next turn. So we'll do that. We got a bunch of units then that are coming online in about a month.
in Australia and a few in New Zealand, and we'll go from there. We looked at ships sunk, top pilot. I don't think we were a lot. No pilots killed last turn. This last turn, in terms of actual airframes shot down, was incredibly light. The Allied forces lost 1 aircraft. The Japanese lost 4. We lost 1 Buffalo in air-to-air combat. Nothing was lost on the ground. The bombing of Rangoon didn't really do anything. One other thing I guess we are potentially going to see is we're going to try and go after this Royal Thai infantry division up here that we already drove back away from Pegu. So the 6th Infantry Brigade, which is the brigade that actually chased these guys away, is going to be arriving there in the next day. I've switched them over to combat footing. They're 2 miles away, so they should cross over here, and maybe they can really hit these guys hard again and drive them east toward Chiang Mai. That's the hope anyway. And that's kind of the situation, guys. So I don't think I've got a lot of other things to kind of call out. I think this is a little bit of a shorter turn. There's not a ton that's going on this turn, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. I'd been out for a while. I'd been in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I've been in Sharpsburg, Maryland for the last 4 days or so. Really enjoyed the trip out there. Great country. Even if you're not like a big Civil War buff, that is some amazing areas to go around and hike. I think I averaged like 14 miles of hiking around per day out there. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. I will probably be streaming again tomorrow. Radio Commander comes out on the 10th, so I'll probably do a quick day before stream, and you guys can kind of take a look at that and see what you guys think of that upcoming game. It's a game that basically puts you in a fire base and requires you to issue orders and through sort of a radio sort of communication with your frontline units, with fog of war, other things like that. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And then maybe Friday we'll live stream Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought, which is now available in early access, and I have a copy for it. You have to pre-order it, but you can get a copy of the alpha if you pay for it now. So there's several games. I want to play Warsaw too. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't come, that is either coming out here in this short few days or not, and I really would like to play both of those. Charcoal, I didn't buy Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. They provided me a copy. So I haven't actually played it yet, but they did provide me a copy of the alpha, which I will be streaming probably on Friday, I would guess. Tomorrow is going to be Radio Commander. But with that being said, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see what XTRG has up his sleeve next time around. Until next time around, as always, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you once again for watching. I'm back. Newhauser, thanks for the sub. J Street, thanks for the bit. And Fletch, thanks for the follow. And all of the supporters and subscribers and viewers and all of that. Thank you for your continued support. Until next time, though, this is the Historical Gamer saying, once again, until next time, I'm out.